Hi, I'm Lance from Permanent Records. On this channel, I love sharing the new record collections that we've picked up most recently. We've had a record shop since 2006, so we bought record collections after record collections after record collections for almost 18 years now. We've bought big record collections, small record collections, newish record collections, very old record collections, and everything in between. This most recent acquisition is one of three really great collections that we got recently. There's a little overlap in each one, which is always really interesting to me. But this one is a mind blower. And the story behind it is also interesting as well. So I figured it was worth making a video about. So without further ado, I'll get into that and then I'll show a bunch of the highlights from the record collection. I can't show everything because, as you can see, there are crates and crates of records behind me, some of which came from this collection. They're all situated over in this area. But either way, it was hundreds, if not many hundreds, if not thousands of records that we bought from this, that were included in this collection. So anyway, here's what happened. We get an email one day out of the blue from a state saying they have 2,300 LPs, 60s and 80s rock and pop, classical world music, including some unopened Japanese imports and rare bootlegs. And they're in Silver Lake, which is like 10 or 15 miles from my house, super easy to get to, and a really nice neighborhood. So I'm already excited. They have all the records cataloged in a spreadsheet, and they're all graded and priced. I'm like, wow, this is going to be super easy. They already know what they have. They know what it's worth. It's all graded, so I can even maybe make an evaluation based on this spreadsheet and make an offer based on that. So I reach out to them and I'm like, please send the spreadsheet. I would love to take a look at it, right? Well, the spreadsheet was not particularly exciting. There were very exciting elements of this spreadsheet. There were records immediately that caught my eye. African Head Charge was at the top of the list, and I saw big black records, etc. But in between, there were long, extended catalogs of Joan Baez and some other artists that we're not particularly interested in buying, because we don't generally buy records that are worth less than about $10 retail, because they're very hard to sell. We don't have a lot of space, and it's just generally uninteresting inventory for us at Permanent Records. Other people buy record collections of all types and buy the lower end stuff as well. We try to avoid it. We aim for the higher end things and the records that are in high demand. So collectibles and classics, rare things, etc. But that said, I took a look at the spreadsheet, and they were looking for an offer based on their evaluation at $60,000 for the whole collection. That's pretty high for a record collection that has 2,300 records in it, to be honest. And they were graded on the spreadsheet from fair to near mint and evaluated at $1 on up to $1,500. So I replied to the email and I said, thank you for sending the spreadsheet. The list looks interesting, but I don't know if I'm the buyer for this entire lot. Are you willing to part it out? Is it an all or nothing deal, or can I come pick and choose the records I want out of the lot? I got no response. So I followed up about a week later, did get a response that time, and I made an appointment to come check out the record collection. So I met Claire and Ellen, and I put my eyes on the collection. I wanted to see exactly what we were working with, and see how organized it was, get a better idea of the quality of the record collection, because grading can be really subjective, and people who don't sit around like me all day grading records and pricing them maybe over-evaluate the condition or under-evaluate it. So it's always best, and it's imperative for somebody like me who's buying to resell, to actually see the records in person. So I asked, I saw the collection and I was immediately drawn to it. I knew it had been well taken care of. It was owned by someone who really valued their record collection and, bought discerningly, and we're very selective about condition and pressing and the and just the general vibe of the collection felt good to me. I poked through a little bit and I was like, yeah, there's those Joan Baez, but there are those big black records, etc. So I said, here's how we do it. And I outlined this in one of my previous videos. We evaluate records piece by piece whenever it's possible. With your evaluation of 60,000 on this collection, I can't just offer you 30K and walk away from this feeling like I got a wholesale deal. And that's what we're looking for as a store. We need records that we can resell for profit, right? Sometimes it's okay to break even on some of the best stuff in the lot, but it's not okay to break even on the $10 records, of course. And I said, here's how we can do it. We can take all these records back to my house. Also, forgive me, it's a little hot in this room. This is my spare bedroom. There's no air conditioning back here. It's not hot. It's not overly hot, but it's definitely warm back here, and I should have thought twice before making a long video in this room. But that's where these records are, so here we are. So I said, here's how we can do it. We could take all these records back to my house. I can spend all of today into the wee hours of the morning evaluating these records and get a quote over to you, within the next 48 hours or so. Or I can bring another person with me into your home, set up a folding table, a couple of laptops, some lamps for condition checking, etc. And I say etc. a lot, don't I? Anyway, and we can do it here. If you feel more comfortable with that. I understand maybe most people don't want their expensive collectibles taken out of their home and trusting someone they just met 10 minutes ago. Makes perfect sense. They said they were going to think about it and get back to me. And over the weekend, they thought about it, got back to me Monday morning, and we made an appointment for Tara and I. Tara is the GM of the Permanent Records Roadhouse. Shout out to Tara. She's wonderful. And we went back to their house early morning on a Tuesday, did 6 or 8 hours worth of evaluating then. We ran out of time and we had to get out of their crib, so we came back the next morning, did the same thing the next day, and by the end of the second day, we were finished. We went through everything and we came up with a number that they were really happy with and that we were happy with. Obviously, as record buyers, you have to, think about profit. Records and profit, they're hard things to think about at the same time because there's so much sentimental value and so much amazing music that you're talking about that has nothing to do with money. But these things, these collectibles they're worth money. And you have to pay fairly for them, and you have to be able to make a profit as somebody who buys the resale. Duh, I'm not telling you anything you don't know already. So anyway, they were happy, we were happy. We actually even negotiated a little bit on the higher end things. I paid them, we loaded out, but not before spending time with the 8 bunnies that the estate has. Ellen and Claire allowed us to pet and feed their 8 incredibly cute bunnies. Tara is a huge bunny person, so she was having a great time with that. So anyway, that's the story of how we acquired this record collection. That doesn't even get into where these records came from, who the owner of them was, and that probably deserves its own video, but I'll touch on just the gist of it. The record collection, the estate, was the estate of Dan Schwartz. Dan Schwartz was a bassist, guitarist, singer-songwriter, producer, and engineer, most notably known for playing with Sheryl Crow. He was a founding member of the Tuesday Night Music Club, which is how Sheryl Crow came up in the LA music scene, by playing with the Tuesday Night Music Club. I learned this from Ellen and Claire, of course, and why Sheryl Crow's debut album is called Tuesday Night Music Club. Dan Schwartz also collaborated with John Hassel, who was a famous Fourth World modern composer. He collaborated with Brian Eno and many others and has like a very, very vast catalog of incredibly interesting work that falls somewhere in the electronic and ambient mixed with ethnic music world. So anyway, Dan Schwartz, Sheryl Crow, John Hassel, so cool. And in addition to being a musician, producer, engineer, songwriter, he also was an audiophile. And he wrote for audiophile publications and got review copies of records, he got stereo equipment to review. He had an insanely amazing stereo setup, which by the time we got there, unfortunately, was no longer set up for us to experience. But by all accounts, it was second to none. So that is where these records came from. They were curated by one Mr. Dan Schwartz, and may he rest in peace. He had exquisite taste and extremely eclectic taste. He owned this copy of Incesticide by Nirvana, and he also owned a ton of classical records. Not a whole lot of people have that kind of cross section in their record collection. So anyway, let's talk about some records in the collection. So yeah, Stereolab, 10 inches, so cool. I love Stereolab. They're one of the coolest bands of the 90s and 2000s, and they're highly influential. We got my favorite Terry Reid album. This record is absolutely amazing. If you haven't heard Ooh Baby by Terry Reid off Seed of Memory, you have to go check that out immediately. This is very much a yacht rock or easy glide affair. Absolutely stunningly soothing and awesome. This needs no introduction. The Downward Spiral by 9 Inch Nails. That was the soundtrack of my teenage years, my early teenage years. This is junior high playlist stuff for me before playlists were a thing. We got Jaco Pastorius's self-titled album, just an absolutely amazing bassist. Liz Phair's Exile in Guyville, another 90s classic. You got Whip Smart by Liz Phair as well. That's on white vinyl, of course. And as I said, Audiophile. We have Audiophile pressings of a lot of classic rock records. So that's what I meant by the spreadsheet maybe seeming a little underwhelming at first. You see Madman Across the Water until you look into the details of the catalog number and what pressing you're dealing with. That title is not particularly interesting. Lots of cool jazz in the mix. I don't know anything about this record. This is the Bruce Katz Band. Lots of local things and records that I assume Dan got as promos for review, or that he engineered or played on. This is, an audiophile pressing of the classic In the Court of the Crimson King. That's the Mo-Fi version of that. And as they stated in their email, lots of super clean Japanese imports. Just really, really interesting lot of records. And the more mundane and common things are mostly all unusual variants. If you're not familiar with Craig Leon, this guy produced the first Ramones record. I think he produced the first Suicide record. He had a very short solo recording career, but made a few really interesting records. Maybe just two, don't quote me on that, but Craig Leon, an interesting electronic musician and engineer. There you have the Sheffield Drum record. Lots of cool 90s records, original pressing of Sleeps with Angels there. And then you got more Japanese imports. I haven't looked at these records since we bought them, so it's really fun to go back through them. This is Who's Next, no big deal, but this is an audiophile reissue of that particular record, and that makes all the difference. There you go, some classic ECM stuff. There's a little bit of reggae, never enough reggae in the mix, although the most recent record collection we bought has a lot of reggae in it, so we'll be sharing that soon. I love XTC. Andy Partridge is an absolute... Andy Partridge and Andy Summers? No, they work together. Andy Summers was in the Police. Andy Partridge is an amazing songwriter. If you haven't heard Drums and Wires by XTC or Black Sea, just go, screw that. Just go listen to Making Plans for Nigel right now by XTC. Lots of cool 90s indie rock in the mix. Here you go. Not a collectible record unless it's the MoFi audiophile pressing of that Jefferson Airplane album and the classic Surrealistic Pillow. Just amazing. Absolutely amazing. It's not every day that you get the opportunity to buy these kinds of records. That's an audiophile pressing of Aqualung. Here's an audiophile reissue of Elton John's Greatest Hits. This is my favorite record in the whole lot. This, you can't see it, but this is a test pressing of the Talking Heads' Remain in Light. Brian Eno produced this album. Again, it's warm in here, forgive me. It's an absolutely stunning masterpiece of polyrhythmic pop music. New Wave does not even begin to describe the artistry and musicianship and songwriting on this album. And this is the test pressing. Oh, I can't believe I was able to buy this. This is one that is definitely going in the personal collection. Actually, I might as well just set that aside there so I do not forget to separate it. Yeah, we didn't buy a lot of the classical records because that's not really our bag, but there were a handful of very collectible classical records, mostly modern composition, classical, contemporary stuff, 20th century classical music, but cool to have a handful of titles like that in the mix. More Stereolab. Oh man, if you don't know the song Heaven off of Tattoo You, go listen to that right now. That's an absolutely stunning, laid-back, psychedelic sleeper. 90s Rolling Stones records are super collectible. This is Avalon, no big deal, but it is the Japanese pressing, and a second copy of the Japanese pressing of Avalon. RIP. There were some big black records in the collection. I think this was the only shellac record, but yeah, this record is essential for fans of Albini and noise rock and post-hardcore. Shellac and everything Albini did is like pretty difficult to categorize. They were really doing their own thing, and that's why we appreciate them so much. This is the MoFi of Dark Side of the Moon. Then we have a half-speed mastered version of Wish You Were Here. More 90s classics, Pixies, absolutely awesome. We got Surfer Rosa, we got Bossa Nova. The first one, by the way, was Come On Pilgrim, and we got Trompe Le Monde. By the way, if I haven't said this already, these records are not going to be immediately for sale. Oh, amazing. East LA punk grail right here. Electrify Me by the Plugs. I have to go out of town for a week. I'm going to be in Ohio, so we're not going to get to these records for a minute, and we have a bunch of other records to handle still. Some Pogues records in the mix. Audiophile. Did I mention Audiophile? Audiophile Police, Audiophile Police, Audiophile Police number 3. We got some Portishead in the mix here. So cool. If you like trip hop, you're very, very familiar with Portishead, of course. We got what feels like a poster included copy of Purple Rain. We got classic post-punk album, the debut by Public Image Limited, and an Audiophile Bonnie Raitt album as well. This video is getting pretty long probably, so I should probably just rip through a few more and maybe do a second. If you want to see another video of this stuff, just shoot me a comment down below and I will try to put one together for y'all. I'm happy to come in here and talk about cool records that we recently bought anytime. That's the second Blue Cheer album, Outside Inside, just heavy proto metal stuff. Japanese pressing of another Jefferson Airplane record. King Crimson, some more reggae. We got King Tubby in the mix this time. Another just kind of oddball jazz record. I don't know anything about this James Leary album, but we're gonna figure it out, that's for sure. There we go. Oddball International, looks like an African record on cram disc. The classic Hot Rats by the GOAT Frank Zappa. A bunch of Frank Zappa in the mix here too. There's Uncle Meat, Happy Jack by The Who. I think we're getting into some more kind of regular stuff. So let me see about switching it up a little bit and moving this crate down to show some slightly more unique things. Audiophile Rod Stewart, Matthew Sweet, Suburban Lawns, LA Legends, and another LA legend from a different era. We got Elliott Smith's XO and Either Or there. More Stereolab. And then, speaking of LA, the essential punk document, Soundtrack for the Decline of Western Civilization. Amazing. OG Dirty. We got another copy of this in a different collection as well. More Stereolab. If you haven't seen the Decline of Western Civilization, you have to stop watching this video right now and go watch that immediately. The aforementioned Brian Eno and Robert Fripp. This is no pussyfooting. LA classic, goth rock. 45 Grave, including the legendary Don Bowles. Got Brian Eno and Jaw Wobble. More Eno, Japanese pressing of Apollo there. Japanese pressing of Ambient 4. Japanese pressing of Eno and David Byrne's My Life in the Bush with Ghost. Ambient 3. 90s Dylan records. Super collectible. I don't know this one. Oh, this is Ben Harper. So apparently I do know that one. More 90s and early 2000s Bob Dylan in the mix. All that stuff. This record is so good and so hard to find, the US original pressing of that. Bunch of Grateful Dead, obviously. Mo-Fi Dylan. And I have to call it a day on this because this video is getting way too long. So maybe a part 2 is necessary. Vote in the comments below. What do we have there? Oh, Creation Rebel on You Sound. Amazing stuff. Audiophile Fresh Cream. And we'll stop here. The Cows. If you're not familiar with the Cows, this is their album Taint Pluribus Unum on Amphetamine Reptile Records. This is a killer noise rock album from the late 80s or early 90s. Anyway, if you like this video and want to see more of this record collection, comment below that you'd like to see more and I'll make another video of it. Until then, oh, also, dare I make a video without saying, please subscribe to this channel and send me a comment and ring the bell. All right, until the next video, until part 2, peace.